Keanu Reeves is sitting next to Whoopi Goldberg on a popular evening talk show, both known for their charm and openness. The cameras and audience are watching their every move closely. Keanu appears in his usual attire, with a large gold cross hanging on his chest, symbolizing his commitment to spirituality. Whoopi, known for her skeptical views on religion, doesn't miss the opportunity to poke fun. "Well, Keanu, the cross on your chest, isn't that a bit old-fashioned? Do you still believe in these things?" She laughs, pointing at his ornament. Keanu smiles calmly and remains silent, preparing for the conversation. This isn't the first time Whoopi has mocked his beliefs, but today she doesn't expect the reaction she gets. Whoopi didn't believe in it. She considered faith to be a delusion, a relic of the past, and her sarcasm sounded easy and confident. "Do you really believe in that cross?" she smirked, pointing at the cross hanging on Keanu's chest. "Tell me, what makes you hold on so stubbornly to these outdated ideas?" Laughter filled the studio. The audience could feel her confidence, and everything she said seemed like truth to them. Keanu seemed like he didn't notice her mockery, and that only heightened her malicious enjoyment. But Keanu didn't flinch. He sat with an impassive expression, and his gaze, despite the lightness of the situation, was directed deep into her soul, as if searching for answers she herself hadn't yet realized. While Whoopi continued her jokes, throwing stones at the believers and, of course, at Keanu, he remained silent. His silence seemed neither offended nor displeased. It was simply a moment where his inner calm and confidence felt unshakable. And then, as the audience began to erupt in laughter and Whoopi prepared to make another remark, Keanu calmly spoke. "Laugh if you want, but one day you'll realize that faith isn't a weakness, but a strength that allows you to never give up." Silence. It was as though an invisible curtain had fallen in the studio, and all eyes were now on Keanu. His words hung in the air, and Whoopi lost her confidence for a moment. The audience held their breath, waiting for her reaction, and the laughter that she had provoked became a soft echo in their ears. Whoopi didn't know how to respond. She had expected Keanu to stoop to her level and start defending his faith. But instead, he said something stronger and simpler, leaving her speechless. After the show, when it was all over, Whoopi walked to her dressing room, but her steps were uncertain. She tried to push away the thoughts that had invaded her mind, but the more she thought, the stronger the feeling became. Keanu had said that faith is strength. And although her personal beliefs wouldn't allow her to accept it, she couldn't shake the feeling that his words meant something. And the more she reflected, the clearer it became that these weren't just words. He didn't say them to fit in with the audience. This was a real outlook on the world that Whoopi perhaps hadn't realized. It was only then that she felt how her laughter had become empty. She realized that her skepticism was merely a defense against something deeper that she didn't understand. She threw her hair back and stopped in front of the mirror, trying to understand why her reaction to Keanu's words had been so strong. Why couldn't she just forget that moment? Days passed, but her doubts only grew stronger. Whoopi had always prided herself on being independent, but now she felt that something important had shifted in her worldview. Keanu had touched something in her soul with his words. She had always thought that religious people were weak, that faith was just a means of comfort. But now she wasn't so sure about her perspective. New thoughts began to emerge in her mind. She started asking herself questions she had never dared to ask before. Why was faith so important to Keanu? How could it be so powerful? She realized she couldn't just ignore it. Whoopi went to her old friend, a psychotherapist she hadn't spoken to in a long time. He had always been the one who helped her understand her feelings. This time, she truly felt the need to figure herself out. "Have you ever thought that faith might not be a weakness, but a strength?" she asked him. He looked at her with an understanding gaze and, after a brief silence, said, "Faith can be a source of strength. But to understand that, you have to be willing to open your heart." Whoopi pondered. What once seemed like weakness was now becoming something much more significant. The next day, Whoopi couldn't stop thinking about Keanu and his words. They kept swirling in her mind like an annoying sound that wouldn't go away. Everything at the TV studio was business as usual. Whoopi, as always, appeared confident in her beliefs, but now something was stirring inside her, and it wouldn't let her rest. That day, she was preparing to film a new episode of her show, but all her thoughts were focused on one simple phrase from Keanu. She had long gotten used to mocking religion and the people who believed in it, but Keanu's words struck her like a bolt of lightning. There was something so genuine in them that she couldn't just brush them off. On the show, Whoopi sat with a feeling of inner unease. All her usual jokes and remarks now felt hollow. She saw the audience laughing, but her own laughter was empty. She tried to hide her thoughts, but she couldn't. Everything happening around her seemed petty and insignificant. A growing sense inside her told her she was missing something. That evening, on her way home, Whoopi still couldn't shake the thought that wound through her mind like a snake. She couldn't understand why Keanu's words had struck her so deeply. She had always taken pride in her independence, in her ability to think logically and rationally. But now her world was beginning to crack. When she got home, Whoopi took off her shoes and sank onto the couch, deep in thought. She could no longer avoid what was troubling her. Doubts were arising inside her that she couldn't explain. She realized her perspective on the world had shifted, and at some point she felt the urge to understand her feelings. Whoopi decided to call her old friend, the psychotherapist she hadn't seen in a long time. He was the only one who could help her make sense of it all. She told him about her inner turmoil and how Keanu's words had made her see faith in a new light. "Have you ever thought that faith might not just be a comfort, but a strength?" he asked her after she explained what she was going through. It was as if her inner world had split open, and she felt something new begin to awaken in her consciousness. Over the next few days, Whoopi searched for answers. She started reading books on philosophy, psychology, and religion. Her view on life began to shift. She could feel her convictions shifting as something inside her was breaking apart and then being rebuilt in a new form. She went back to her old interview with Keanu, where they talked about his life and how faith had helped him overcome hardships. There was something simple, yet powerful in his words. And now Whoopi was beginning to understand that faith could be more than just part of religious dogma. She realized it was a path to inner strength, and at some point, she herself began to feel that strength rising within her. Weeks went by, and Whoopi could no longer ignore the changes happening inside her. She began to listen more attentively to people who believed in higher powers, and suddenly, she realized that those who truly believed had an incredible resilience and inner strength. Her own perception of the world became more flexible. Now, instead of criticizing or mocking, she started to seek meaning in religious teachings, in stories of faith and spirituality. Whoopi understood that this journey had only just begun. She thought about Keanu and his words. She couldn't say she had become a believer, but she felt that her views had started to change. Perhaps she couldn't fully agree with his convictions, but now she saw that faith could be a source of strength and inspiration for many people. Whoopi could no longer remain the same. She had changed not only on the inside, but on the outside as well. She mocked less those whose beliefs were unfamiliar to her. She began to respect their choices and to learn from them. One day, back on the set, Whoopi realized that her outlook on life had broadened. She understood that now, perhaps, her path was different, and she was ready to move in that direction. And it all began with one simple conversation with Keanu, which made her rethink what she used to see as weakness, and now began to perceive as strength. A few weeks had passed since the day Whoopi began to question her views on religion and faith. She still couldn't quite get over how much her perception of the world had changed, but the internal transformation she was going through felt complicated and uncertain. Every morning she woke up with the sense that her beliefs were no longer the same. She felt an inner conflict. It was one thing to feel something new, and another to accept it as part of herself. Whoopi wasn't ready to give up her skepticism entirely, but now she was searching for something more, something that might provide answers to her questions. On one of those days after filming, she met Keanu at a cafe. His calmness and quiet confidence still had an effect on her. He was the same as always, but there was something new in his eyes. A quiet strength Whoopi hadn't noticed before. "How are you feeling?" Keanu asked, sitting across from her with a gentle smile. Whoopi hesitated. Giving a straight answer, as she usually would have been easier, but something inside her wouldn't let her fall back into her old ways. "Strange," she said, shaking her head. "I feel like I need to understand more. You were right. I've started to see faith in a completely different light, and now I don't know what to do with that." Keanu remained silent, giving her space to think. "That's okay," he replied, his voice as calm as ever. "You don't have to decide right away what to do with what you're feeling. What matters more is that you're open to something new." Whoopi looked at him, her gaze filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Keanu. You're helping me realize that being open to faith isn't a weakness." A few days later, Whoopi returned to her reflections. She began reading books, talking with people of faith, and even attending church. But for her, it wasn't just about going to a place of worship. She was searching for something that could support her evolving thoughts. One day, sitting in a church, listening quietly to a sermon, she suddenly felt something shifting inside her. She didn't understand it right away. It wasn't just the experience of hearing words being spoken. It was a realization. Faith didn't have to be just a comfort. It could be a way to understand the world, to understand herself and others. Whoopi suddenly understood that faith could be a powerful force. It could be the very thing that helps people overcome their fears and doubts. She realized that her inner transformation wasn't a mistake. It was a step forward. She began to explore new horizons, talking to people about what she was feeling. And they didn't judge her. On the contrary, they supported her. In that moment, she realized that this wasn't just about belief, but about a path she was ready to walk. But despite all the changes, Whoopi couldn't avoid feeling anxious. She felt new questions beginning to arise in her life, and she needed time to answer them. She wasn't ready to fully accept this new role for herself, but something in her heart told her that this wasn't just a phase. It was the beginning of something greater. Keanu was there, and his words kept echoing in her mind. His self-assurance, his view of faith, all of it helped Whoopi make sense of her own feelings. "Are you ready to believe in yourself?" he asked her one day when she visited him again. Whoopi felt something deep within her shift. Yes, she was ready to move forward despite all her doubts. "I'm ready," she said with a smile. "I'm ready to change everything." At that moment, she understood that faith wasn't just something external. It was in her heart, in her thoughts, in her actions. And this path she was just beginning to walk, it was her own choice. From that day on, Whoopi began to see the world differently. She embraced her faith and her feelings, understanding that it wasn't weakness but strength that helped her move forward. And in that moment, she took a new step, a step toward inner harmony. She continued to meet with Keanu, continued to talk about faith and life. But now their conversations were different. They weren't just exchanges of opinion. They had become a search for answers Whoopi had been looking for so long. Now she knew that faith wasn't just words. It was a path that could lead to real transformation. Whoopi was ready to walk that path, and her life would never be the same. Several weeks had passed since Whoopi began to see faith as something more than just religious teaching. Her thoughts were becoming deeper and more complex, but she increasingly felt that her inner world was changing. She didn't know that this would be the beginning of something new, something she couldn't even explain to herself. One evening, as she was returning home, Whoopi felt a strange atmosphere in the air. A thick fog had settled over the streets, and the darkness felt unusually heavy. She quickened her pace, trying to reach her apartment as fast as possible, but something was unsettling her. It was the sensation that someone was watching her. She turned a corner and suddenly stopped. In the dark alley ahead of her stood a figure. She couldn't make out the details of the silhouette, but a strange feeling made her heart race. A man in a long black coat stood still, unmoving, as if he were waiting for her. "Are you all right?" Whoopi finally said, trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. The man didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at her. Whoopi felt a chill run down her spine. She wanted to turn and walk away, but her body wouldn't respond. It was as if something invisible was holding her in place. Then the man spoke. His voice was soft and calm, but each word sliced through the night's silence. "You felt it, didn't you? He's here. Everywhere." Whoopi froze. Her legs wouldn't move, but her heart began to pound faster. "Who?" she barely managed to ask. The man didn't answer, but his lips curled into a slight smile, and his eyes sparkled in the dark. Whoopi tried to take a step back, but suddenly she felt a strange warmth inside her, as if her soul had been touched by something comforting. "You're searching for answers, Whoopi. They're close, but you have to be ready to accept them." Suddenly, the man vanished as quickly as he had appeared. Whoopi stood alone in the empty alley, thinking over the stranger's words. She couldn't understand what had just happened, but the feeling that her life was about to change wouldn't leave her. The next day, Whoopi still couldn't forget the strange incident. She tried to find a logical explanation, but the more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that it hadn't been a coincidence. It was as if that man, or being, or even shadow, was somehow connected to the feelings she had been experiencing lately. She decided to talk to Keanu. He was someone she felt could understand, because his faith was genuine, and perhaps he had the answers to the questions that were troubling her. When they met, Whoopi couldn't help but share what she was going through. "Keanu, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like I'm not alone in this world," she said, her voice full of doubt and unease. Keanu looked at her with deep interest, showing neither fear nor confusion. He listened carefully and then replied slowly, "This might be the beginning of something new for you. Sometimes our search leads us to something greater, something we can't understand right away. But don't be afraid. You're on the right path." Whoopi felt his words soothe her. In these moments, Keanu always seemed to be a source of peace and confidence, but her inner restlessness still lingered. She went back home, deciding to spend the night reflecting. But as soon as she entered her apartment, her eyes fell on a book lying on the table. She didn't remember putting it there. It was old, with yellowed pages and a worn-out cover. Whoopi approached the table, unable to understand where the book had come from. There was no author's name, no title on the cover. She opened to the first page. The writing was strange, yet somehow familiar. The words on the pages seemed to whisper her name, as if the book itself had been written for her. "This is for you, Whoopi," she whispered to herself. "Are you ready?" With every word, new emotions flared within her, and the old anxiety began to melt away. Whoopi realized that this moment was her revelation. She began to understand that her life was about to change, and that change was not only about faith, but also about forces she was just beginning to recognize. A few days later, Whoopi met with Keanu again. She couldn't keep silent about what she was experiencing, and her heart overflowed with emotion. Keanu, though as calm as ever, sensed that what she was going through was no longer just personal. It was meaningful. "Are you ready to move forward, Whoopi?" he asked after she told him about the book and her feelings. Her eyes filled with determination. "I'm ready. Now I understand that my faith isn't just for me, it's something more. It's a path leading me to revelation, and I have to follow it." And when she spoke those words, she felt something resonate deep within her. A long journey lay ahead, one full of mysteries and revelations, and she knew that on this path she would be guided not only by faith, but also by a strength that would help her unlock the secrets hidden in her heart. Time passed, and Whoopi and Keanu found themselves once again sharing a stage. But this meeting wasn't just another show. It was the culmination of everything that had unfolded in their lives over the past few weeks. Whoopi had changed, and it was visible. More and more, she realized that her faith wasn't just a part of her life. It was the foundation of everything she did and of who she was becoming. The show followed its usual format. Keanu sat next to Whoopi, and her gaze was more focused than ever before. Today, she wasn't just a host. She was a participant, and her eyes were filled with determination. This was the moment when Whoopi couldn't stay silent. The microphone was in her hands, and she felt the need to share what had changed in her life. It wasn't something superficial, it ran much deeper. She turned to Keanu, and instead of staying quiet or in the background, she chose to speak. "Keanu," Whoopi began, her voice firm and confident, "I want to share with you what I've come to understand over the past few weeks. You once told me that faith is strength, but now I realize it's not just strength. It's peace in the soul that helps you move forward, no matter the obstacles." Keanu listened attentively. His eyes showed support, but he also understood that Whoopi was beginning to find her own path. This was the moment she was starting to recognize her place in the world. "I used to laugh at all this, thinking it was just an illusion," Whoopi continued. "But now I know that to believe doesn't just mean to hope. It means to act. You, Keanu, opened my eyes. You showed me that faith isn't weakness, it's power. And I'm ready to share that." Whoopi paused briefly, then continued. "I never expected to be standing here saying this, but now I can't stay silent. I've started to see how my faith is changing, not just my life, but the lives of those around me. I've felt it fill the emptiness, give me strength I never knew I had." At that moment, Whoopi lightly touched her neck, just beneath the collar of her shirt, where a cross now rested on her chest. It was a symbol of her transformation, her new awareness. Keanu sat silently, smiling deeply as he looked at her. He didn't need to say much. He knew how much this moment meant to her. She wasn't just speaking words, she was sharing her soul. He knew this meant more to her than anything else. "I'm proud of you," he finally said, his voice full of warmth and respect. "You've realized that faith isn't just words, it's action. And like you said, when we believe, we can change lives. And your cross, it's not just an ornament. It's a symbol of what you're doing to help." Whoopi nodded and quietly said, "I feel like I have a responsibility now. I can't be just a bystander anymore. This isn't just my faith, it's something I can offer the world. I don't just want to believe, I want to share it, to help others find their way." A silence fell over the stage. Whoopi looked truly calm and confident, more than ever before. Her words didn't sound like a sermon, they felt like a personal revelation. There was a fire in her eyes that didn't fade, but only burned brighter. "And I'll be with you, Whoopi," Keanu said, "no matter what lies ahead. You're already helping more than you realize, and together, we'll do this." The noise in the audience faded, and everyone could feel the presence of something powerful in the air. Whoopi and Keanu had become not just leaders, but symbols of change. Today, on that stage, they were sharing something meaningful. They had begun a journey that not only transformed their own lives, but perhaps the lives of everyone who heard them. With this new awareness, Whoopi was ready to move forward. With the cross on her chest and confidence in her heart, she knew that faith was strength, and she was ready to use it to help others.